So, happy spring, everybody. No, I'm serious. I know it doesn't feel like spring, but trust me, it is. Or at least it will be in 5 days when the almond trees blossom, the rainy season brings about the first signs of floral growth. That's right, this Thursday is Tu B'Shvat, the Jewish New Year for the trees. Not here in Baltimore, to be sure, where it's snowy and frozen, but in Eretz Yisrael, where there really will be pink and white almond blossoms unfurling in short order, followed by poppies, anemones, lupines, tulips, and irises. Within weeks, fields of the Galilee will be blanketed with violet, cardinal, and white. This week's Parsha is focused on plagues, on tyranny, liberation, and self-determination, and I guess these are more or less the themes that I've been exploring in my sermons since October 7th. But long before a new Pharaoh arose in Egypt, one who did not know Joseph, Jacob, our father, gave permission to his sons to bring Benjamin down to Egypt. This wasn't an easy choice, of course. Benjamin was the only other child of Jacob's favored wife, Rachel, but he understood the circumstances were grim, the famine was devastating, the need for assistance was crucial. So the text tells us, then their father Israel, which was of course the other name for Jacob, said to them, Im kain efozot asu kechu mizimrat haaretz bichlechem. If it must be so, do this. Take some of the choicest products of your land in your baggage and carry them down as a gift for the man. Some balm and some honey, gum, labdanum, pistachio nuts, and almonds. But Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of Apt, the 18th century founder of the Apta Zimkov Mezhibuzh Hasidic dynasty, reads this verse from Genesis differently. Jacob isn't saying take the choice products of the land to bring to Pharaoh so that the king will show mercy. Heschel reads Kechu mizimrat haaretz as take with you the song of the land. Jacob, according to the Apta Rebbe, isn't most concerned with placating Pharaoh. He's concerned with carrying the fullness of Eretz Yisrael on his family's journeys into a foreign land. And what is the song of the land, asks the Rebbe of Apt? It's there in Psalms. Psalm 24, Ladonai haaretz umlo'ah. On one hand, haaretz could be the land, meaning the land of Israel itself, and perhaps that's what the Apter meant. After all, a vehicle for our celebration of Tu B'Shvat is produce from Eretz Yisrael, namely the 7 species mentioned in the Torah: olives, figs, grapes, dates, pomegranates, wheat, and barley. And these do feature prominently at a Tu B'Shvat Seder. But surely the Apter was well aware of the other meaning of haaretz, that is the earth, not just the land. The second part of the verse seems to support this reading, Tevel v'yoshvei va. So the whole verse is, the earth is the Lord's and all that it holds, the world and its inhabitants. This translation of the verse, brought by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of Apt, is in fact the title of a book by another Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, the 20th century descendant of the Apter Rebbe, who is well known to us modern Jews. That book, The Earth is the Lord's, is Heschel's reminiscence about the world of Eastern European Jewry from which his Hasidic ancestor hailed. And the words comprising the second part of the verse, Tevel v'yoshveva, the world and its inhabitants, inspired the custom some have of adding V'al kol yoshvei Tevel, all earth dwellers, along with the people Israel, during the Oseh Shalom, the prayer for peace at the conclusion of some of the Kaddishes. What is Tu B'Shvat really? It's a portal connecting our particular concerns about a particular land and our particular people's relationship to that land with the entire world, perhaps the entire universe, and all that dwells within it. If there's anything that we learned about the environment as we face our climate crisis, it's that the natural world knows no national boundaries. Just as viruses don't care about borders, clear-cutting a forest here, polluting the air here, or water here, or carbon emissions here affect the planet everywhere. But today, I don't want to dwell on the crises, neither the war in Gaza nor the climate, but instead to honor what I think is the point of Tu B'Shvat in the first place, which is to celebrate the natural world, its abundance, its gifts and grandeur. The month of Shevat, teaches the 20th century Heschel, is when the New Year of Trees was established, because it is in this season that the awakening of life and growth begins to materialize in the form of blossoming and flowering of trees. It must be assumed, he writes, that Tu B'Shvat was established as the new year because farmers were concerned about the condition and fecundity of their trees, and in their hearts they whispered silent prayers for their development and success. In other words, Tu B'Shvat is a chance to attune ourselves each year to the song of the land, the rhythms of the earth. This magnificent sphere, which supports billions of human beings and trillions of organisms in a precious and wondrous ecosystem. Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg, with whom Miriam and I were privileged to spend a Shabbat in London years ago, writes about urban living and nature in his book, The Eternal Journey. Reflecting on the Apter Rebbe's interpretation of Mizimrat Haaretz, he writes, "The trees and the whole of nature speak to us. To be denied their presence is to be subjected to a serious deprivation of the spirit, as city dwellers partly are. Indeed, there may be parts of the heart which simply fail to receive their due education because of the absence of the language of trees and grasses, animals, and birds. Part of our essential being starves. We are that much more vulnerable to the subtle desensitization of our moral and spiritual being. Maybe this insight," Wittenberg continues, maybe this is the insight, rather, that underlies the frequent poet references to trees throughout the Bible, but especially in the Book of Prophets and in the Psalms. In the Bible, he says, trees do not only speak, they sing, dance, and clap their hands for joy. Trees are among the first plantings of God in Eden, and trees are mentioned as part of the first recorded sale of land by Ephron to Abraham. Abraham himself plants a tree in Beersheba and calls on the name of the eternal God. Many of us live in the city, and happily many of us still also live near trees and birds. And Baltimore County, nearby, due to good zoning, I suspect, is not riddled with endless suburban sprawl, but includes rivers and forests, and in summer, the rolling green of horse farms. And yet concentrated, especially urban living, is removed from wilderness, from the true wild. The trees of Druid Hill Park, wonderful though they are, do not applaud with the same intensity as the trees of Gunpowder Falls or the Shenandoah National Park. So let's take a moment this Shabbat to listen to the trees. Where does this Jewish Arbor Day come from? We might think that there's only one new year on the Jewish calendar. And what is that? Rosh Hashanah, of course, in the fall. But according to the 2nd century Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, there are actually 4 New Years. One for kings and pilgrimages, another for animal tithing, a third for calculating sabbaticals, jubilees, and crop tithing, and finally the 15th of Shevat for the trees. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch called the calendar the Catechism of the Jews. Perhaps that's why Rashi suggests that the true beginning of the Jewish story occurs in our Parsha, Exodus 12, verse 2, when we read, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodeshim Rishon Hu Lachem, L'Chodshe Hashanah. This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. Rabbi Alan Lucas suggests that of the 4 New Years delineated in the Mishnah, each has its own purpose, its own accounting, and its own role in demonstrating that life, as exemplified by the calendar, is a constant parade of new beginnings. So in a funny way, Tu B'Shvat, which literally means the 15th of Shvat, really serves to mark new beginnings on existing trees. For example, if fruit begins to blossom on a tree before this coming Thursday, it's tithed with last year's crops. But if after the 15th, it's counted with the next. But Tu B'Shvat has, of course, become bigger than its original narrow purpose in the land of Israel during the time in which the temples stood. It's a day on which to enjoy the earth's bounty, to appreciate the universe's unyielding dynamism. The Kabbalists of the 16th and 17th centuries established a Tu B'Shvat Seder, loosely based on the Pesach Seder. Raise your hand if you've ever participated at Tu B'Shvat Seder. Great. They're really a lot of fun. There are 15 steps of the Passover Seder, you may know. And since 2, right, Tetvav in Hebrew is 15, one custom is to eat 15 different types of fruits, which is kind of the opposite of Passover if you think about it. Like the Passover version, the Tu B'Shvat Seder has redemptive elements and utilizes the number 4 in its framing as well. The Kabbalists, the mystics, understood there to be 4 worlds, or 4 spheres. That of Asiyah, of action, Yitzirah, formation, Bria, thought or creation, and Atzilut, spirit or emanation. These worlds correspond to the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, the 4 seasons, and also the 4 aspects of the self, physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. 2 primary rituals from the Seder highlight these categories. The first is 4 cups of wine, but in this case, the case of the Tu B'Shvat Seder, they combine white and red wine. So the first cup is entirely white, the second cup is white with a dash of red, the third is mostly red with a bit of white, and the last cup is pure red wine. Food is also organized according to this framework. Some foods, like oranges, bananas, pomegranates, are edible inside, but with an inedible exterior. So these represent the world of action and the physical self. Some fruits are edible outside, but not on the inside, such as dates, olives, apricots. These are the world of formation, the emotional self. The third world is thought, or creation. And that's represented by fruit which is entirely edible. Can you think of fruit like that? Maybe blueberries, strawberries. This is the intellectual self, grapes, some grapes. The spiritual self, within the spiritual world of Atzilut, is shrouded in mystery. So no physical sustenance is consumed for this last category. Now, since the advent of the modern state of Israel, there's been a widespread return to these medieval rituals and the more ancient holiday of Tu B'Shvat itself. Much of this is because of wider Jewish access to seasonal experience, to a seasonal experience of the land in which the Bible was written and to which its agricultural sensibilities pertain. Jews have been farmers at various times and places throughout history, of course, but because we were often forbidden to own land, the return to our ancestral land also meant a re-engagement with our agrarian heritage, both that of the Tanakh, but also of the Mishnaic period, of the early rabbinic period. Perhaps this is why so many Israelis and recent Jewish pilgrims to Israel have been volunteering to plant and harvest crops, picking up the work of those reservists who have been deployed, or those who have been removed from boundary areas in the north, or those whose lives were taken on October 7th and can no longer work the land of their kibbutzim. But I think another reason Tu B'Shvat has become so important is that it simply reminds us how blessed we are to be of the world, not just on it or in charge of it, something that we do quite poorly, but truly of it. So I'll close with a story from Abraham Isaac Cook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of British Mandatory Palestine, because it's about Eretz Yisrael, but it's really about the entire world, just like the tension within our Psalm 24. Once, when Rav Cook was walking in the fields, lost deep in thought, a young student with him plucked a leaf off a branch. Rav Cook was visibly shaken by this act and turned to his companion, saying to him gently, "Believe me when I tell you, I never simply pluck a leaf or a blade of grass or any living thing unless I have to." He explained further, every part of the natural world is singing a song and breathing forth a secret of the divine mystery of creation. For the first time, the young student understood what it meant to show compassion to all of creation. So, Chevra, this is my prayer for us, that even during these dark days, as we hold the pain of the land and the pain of its people, we should also carry with us the Zimrat Haaretz, the song of the land. And even in the midst of winter, that we remember this Tu B'Shvat, the importance of the natural universe, that we are caretakers and components of a delicate ecosystem, that we must be careful not to pluck or harm without cause. And finally, that those of us who live in the cities or the suburbs, that there are many benefits to this way of life, should find ways to encounter and appreciate the world of forests, of canyons, of deserts and mountains, of rivers and of lakes. And may these wondrous places inspire us to behave with more compassion, more patience, and more humility. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach, wishing all of us a happy Tu B'Shvat.